guys, this is Lala Legacy and welcome back to another episode of SeaBed. So let's get into this tip first before we head back into the main story. So this is Tips 2, Second Trip, Landscape Immersion. I was on my way to Tokyo to pick up furniture for my mansion from a friend. I had two good friends in high school, and one of them would donate her furniture to my place from time to time. She established herself as the president of the hotel business in the capital, being the most successful one out of the three of us. Yesterday, she told me over the phone how she decided to close a few of her hotels and sell off the land. According to her, the decision wasn't made due to the business struggling. In fact, she bought that land expecting its value to skyrocket so she could sell it off at a higher price. Long story short, she now had some extra furniture she didn't know what to do with. She sent a portion of the furniture to her other places and sold off some others at an auction, but she still had a lot left and didn't feel like throwing everything away. Besides, donating them to someone was cheaper than disposal anyway. It made her remember that I ran an inn, so she decided to contact me. We both came from a small village in the mountains. Most of it consisted of rice paddy fields and traditional Japanese buildings with thatched roofs that you could rarely find anymore in this day and age. Besides that, only lush green mountains surrounded the area. It was the very definition of the word countryside. As such, the majority of my childhood memories were of flowing rivers, singing birds, and the smell of rice field, or the fresh smell of rice fields. I heard the chirping of birds as I got off the train, but as I looked around, trying to find them, I only saw a tall pole with a speaker on top. I descended the stairs, thinking that people in the city were weird. My friend had always been obsessed with success, so she ended up choosing a famous university in the capital. At first, I was worried about her. As to why, well, there was never really anything about her that made her stand out in school. Even her grades were all average. I imagined city people as a competition-driven group that would do anything for money. So I wasn't sure how a country lamb like her could possibly survive in a sea of such sharks. However, she ended up being much more capable than I gave her credit for, and got as far as opening multiple hotels and inns all over the area all by herself. In retrospect, perhaps her ability not to stand out in the country was just another manifestation of her shrewdness in life. I never suspected her to have an interest in running businesses, although she was always the one who'd collect money from us to pay for the bill whenever we went out to eat. She was never a part of any group of authority in school, like a student council or something similar, but now that I thought about it, she would always find a way to keep the discussion going once all the others had run out of ideas or energy. It was interesting how talent would sometimes manifest in the least expected places, although you could only ever notice that in retrospect. As for me, I remained in our hometown and still lived there. As I left the station, I climbed onto the back seat of the first taxi I spotted and told the driver the address of the hotel. The driver raised a white-gloved hand in sign of understanding. I leaned back in my seat and recalled the last time I visited her hotel. She bought some ancient building with a bunch of old furniture and gave it a makeover. The result was the hotel. I wasn't sure if they'd fit my place, but I did have my eye on a few specific things. As such, I promised her to board the Shinkansen from Kansai to Tokyo first thing in the early morning the next day. I looked up at a tall building I saw through the window. It was my third time in Tokyo. Most of the time, I just head straight to the international airport by train, so it was pretty new for me to actually be driven through the city in a taxi. I could feel the driver staring at me through the rearview mirror, so I decided not to fidget too much. When I reached the hotel, I found her in the lobby. She was talking on the phone. She drew the phone away from her ear for a moment, and before I could open my mouth said, "If there's anything that piques your interest, put the sticker on it." Back on the train, I mentally ran through multiple simulations of how our conversation would go, but it seemed like I was only wasting my time. But that was so like her. Following her instructions, I spent the rest of the time walking around and putting stickers with my name on them, on things I liked. Turning around, I saw all sorts of furniture with my stickers on them. It reminded me of a property seizure scene I once saw in a movie. Some of the things I wanted were already gone, but I still got my hands on quite a number of nice articles. One of the antiques I grew particularly fond of was a moss green one-seater sofa of English design. After about an hour, I returned to the lobby to look for my friend. I spotted her walking through the main entrance. She seemed to be on her way somewhere, accompanied by a person wearing an expensive suit. "You're already done?" "Yeah." "Did you find anything?" "I found quite a few things I could use. It was definitely worth a trip." "Glad to hear that." "Are you going somewhere?" "Yes, I have some urgent business to take care of." "I don't think I'll be back by sunset." "I see. I'm sorry for having you come all this way and—" "It's okay. Work doesn't wait. I'll come again some other time to thank you for this." She made a warm smile upon hearing me say that. It was at least 3 times more dazzling than the one I remembered from our school days. We're actually going to pass by the station on the way. We could drop you off there if you want." "That helps save me some cash on the taxi. Thanks!" I spotted a luxurious-looking black car parked by the side of the road as we left the hotel. We both climbed onto the back seat. The interior smelled brand new. I looked out the window as the car began to move. I might have come from the country, but even I knew that this was a luxurious German car that must have cost a fortune to buy and maintain. As I was wondering whether she would be filing a purchase of this caliber under taxable or non-taxable expenditure, she suddenly asked me how I felt about the city. It took me a few moments to realize the meaning of her question. "It's quite different from home. I was really surprised by that random bird song speaker at the station." "Oh, those are for the visually handicapped." I gave her a confused look. "You might have noticed how they were all set up by the stairs." I reddened, realizing I had the wrong idea all along. It's been quite a while since I've been back home," she remarked, changing the subject upon noticing my distress. We spent the few minutes it took to get to the station discussing the country. As we reached our destination, I stepped out of the car and thanked her. I glanced at my watch as the car rolled away. I had nothing to do for the rest of the day. Heaving a sigh, I ventured into the Nakano shopping district with the intention of grabbing something for lunch. After walking around for a while, I found myself attracted to a melon bread shop. Oh my gosh, melon bread! Melon pan! And a ramen restaurant. However, I felt like melon bread alone would not be enough, while the ramen seemed like it was made using bland soy sauce for the base. Ugh. Then I remembered how there was an excellent ramen shop in Ueno. I couldn't quite remember how to get there, but I had plenty of time to spare, so I hopped on a train at Nakano Station that headed in Ueno's general direction. I changed to the Yamanote line at Shinjuku and reached my destination with far less difficulty than I had expected. It was already past 1 o'clock, but I managed to get into the shop without having to wait in line. With no one to talk to while I ate, I ended up reminiscing about the last time I'd been here. I ate here with the other one of those 2 friends I mentioned. At the time, she wanted to go to the nearby zoo. It was 2 o'clock when I left the restaurant. I had reserved a seat on the night train, but seeing how it was a weekday, I probably could have found an open seat on any random train at this hour. However, my original plan was to spend the night drinking with my friend while reminiscing about the old days, then use all my remaining energy to catch the last train and sleep until I was home. I felt a need to use all this pent-up energy. Besides, I was in a good mood after getting my hands on all that great furniture for free. I decided to go to the zoo. I thought it'd be empty at this hour, but I was wrong. There was a middle-aged man with a camera looking at birds. I also found an old man gazing at the elephants. I ran into a whole family on the Penguin Mountain. Each corner had at least one person strolling around. One man was drinking beer in front of the bear cage. At first glance, I didn't spot anything inside, so I stopped and began looking for the bear that was supposedly there. Its cage was on a lower level compared to me, with some rocks, a lake, and a large tree in the middle. I circled around the cage, but I still couldn't find the bear. Perhaps the caretakers took us somewhere else. The bear might have needed a medical checkup, or had to be taught some tricks to entertain the audience, or maybe it needed to be washed at some other facility. I stole a glance at the man sitting on the bench drinking beer. He was absent-mindedly gazing in my direction. I couldn't imagine what he was doing there in front of an empty cage, although I figured he could have said the same thing about me. When I reached the small animal corner, I realized I was going through the zoo in the exact same order as before. There were hundreds of potential routes one could have picked. I remembered how adamant my friend was about seeing an anteater, so we pretty much combed the entire place looking for it. I was following the exact same route now. I stood in front of the anteater's cage. It was still in the same place, a building separated from visitors by a glass wall. There was a sign with the word anteater written on it in white ink dangling in front of the cage. "Found it," I said while she was looking somewhere else. "You did?" She cheerfully hurried to my side. "Where is it?" She lined up next to me. "I don't think it's here right now." "No way! This cannot be!" She dropped her shoulders. When I asked her why she wanted to see it so much, she told me its hands looked cute when it tried to walk on its hind legs. She wanted to see the real thing ever since she saw it in a picture. And indeed, there was a picture of an anteater on its hind legs in front of the cage, too. "It seems to do that when it's angry," I told her as I read the explanation. "That's what's good about it." I very much doubted the anteater would have agreed with that. I pulled myself back to reality and gave the cage a good look. There was no sign or sight of the anteater this time either. I felt like I could now understand her disappointment. Someone else came to the cage while I was still lingering in front of it. I decided to make it look like I was looking for an animal before I hastily leave. However, as I shook my head in front of the cage, a man walked up next to me and began taking pictures of it. Confused, I peered into the cage again. But no matter where I looked, I still couldn't see any animals. Next, I looked at the man. Wearing a polo shirt, he seemed to be lost in his own world while taking pictures. Excuse me, could you tell me what you're taking pictures of?" I had to ask, otherwise this would have kept me up all night. Maybe there was something wrong with my head that made me unable to perceive anteaters in the real world. Besides, I hated the feeling of regret that came after letting certain opportunities slip past you. The man looked at me and made a friendly smile. "I'm in need of some scenery pictures." "I'm not here to photograph animals," he added. "Scenery pictures?" Still somewhat puzzled, I ended up parroting his words. "I'm designing something that's supposed to recreate the world of animals living in their cages. It's called habitat reproduction, and I'm collecting samples for it right now." He stopped taking pictures and explained everything to me in a friendly manner. "I see. It wasn't anything special after all. Now that I thought about it, being unable to see anteaters probably wasn't a very realistic disease anyway. If that even warranted any thought." That is a miniature South American tropical rainforest inside that cage. Even the sounds and the temperature are being emulated. Now that he mentioned it, this room was indeed unnaturally warm, and I could even hear the sounds of monkeys and birds through the speakers. I see, I said, feeling impressed. Animals feel more at home this way, and the audience, too, has a chance to learn more about actual tropical conditions. That's pretty elaborate. I'll pay more attention to the scenery from now on. You do that. I guarantee it'll be more fun that way. After parting from the man, I followed his suggestion and began scrutinizing the environment of the other cages. I thought they all had similar plants inside them, but as I took a closer look, I realized that almost every cage had something different. What surprised me was that none of them were merely models or imitations, but real actual plants that the zoo staff must have been growing. I found a lot of plants I had never seen before. I didn't realize it, but this place could have easily doubled as a botanic garden. They must have cared for their animals quite a bit. A branch quivered in a tall cage inside the bird corner. I spotted a big owl. I turned to the signboard for help, but it listed a whole bunch of different predatory birds along with their illustrations, and I couldn't immediately find the one I had just seen. The signboard had information about their names, natural habitat, and the methods of their hunting. I stared into the round eyes of the bird. I had a feeling it was staring back at me. I wondered if it could remember its old forest, although from the way it motionlessly stared at me, it didn't seem like it was having any such thoughts. Now that I thought about it, she was also quite interested in birds. Back when we lived together in that mansion up on the mountains, we would observe different types every season. She would find all sorts of birds and tell me their names. I remembered how we'd look for them in the forest after hearing their chirping. During one of our walks, I asked her the names of every single bird we spotted. She ended up mentioning over 30 species. I myself only recognized 2 or 3. But I could still remember over half the names she kept repeating. I pulled myself back to reality again. The owl was still staring at me. I guess the zoo helped me remember my past at least. Okay, so that is the end of that tip, guys. So, I'm gonna leave the episode here, because there's not much time left to go back into the main story for this episode. So, if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below, and if you haven't already, subscribe. By subscribing, you're becoming part of a legacy. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye!